Have you heard of this company called Gulfport Energy?
I'm going to guess that they have something to do with energy in the Gulf.
And you got to fly in and out of the Gulf, Ben. You really do. Unless you're going to take a boat. And I mean, that whole like Florida thing that points into the ocean, it takes a while to go around. It comes to light in 2021 that the CEO and his wife were using the corporate jets to fly in and out of Las Vegas for high-stake poker tournaments into Napa Valley for wine tastings.
That sounds like a little bit different than things that I would maybe expense on my Brex card.
It was $650,000 plus corporate expenses that the board found was just quietly shoveled underneath travel expenses for business purposes.
I don't think that's that chill, but cool.
So the SEC actually stepped in. It wasn't just like, hey, corporate governance thing, we should can this guy. They actually pressed charges against him. He was able to plead no contest on his way out, but pay a massive fine. And he got fired by the company, which, I mean, that's kind of what happens when you abuse the jet. I got an even crazier one for you. Did you play with Tyco toys growing up?
Was it like Fisher Price, that kind of thing?
No. So it was one of the biggest toy companies in the 1980s.
A new super turbo train with Daredevil jump from Tyco.
This scandal was all over Wall Street Journal headlines, okay? So it was the CEO, Dennis Kozlowski, who I thought was a character from Monsters, Inc., and CFO Mark Schwartz. They were convicted of this multi-million-dollar grand larceny ring, and they were sentenced to 25 years in state prison.
Doesn't seem that good and not as fun as Monsters, Inc.
But what was fun are the parties they threw.
Jimmy Buffett was flown in for the music, and guests were treated to a special cake.
So in 2001, Kozlowski threw this infamous Roman Empire-themed 40th birthday party for his wife on the Italian island of Sardinia.
Yeah, no, that sounds extremely fun.
He flew dozens of friends out to this island, and they spent over $2 million on a party, and he logged it under corporate retreat.
Can't make this stuff up.
The execs of Tyco, this wasn't like the first thing that they tried. You don't just go from like zero to all expenses paid 40th birthday party on the island of Sardinia. They were using jets on and off for years to fly mistresses out to Newport, to Nantucket, to have all these crazy events with their friends all over the US and world. And they were booking it all as business expenses and corporate retreats.
Man, if only Sam Walton knew what he was missing out on. Maybe he would have been, a little bit more loose with the cash.
Kozlowski ended up serving 7 of those 25 years in a medium security facility, so a Camp Cupcake. He was granted work release and paroled in 2014. Schwartz also got out. That was in 2013, a year earlier. But prior to their prison sentences, this is wild. They were hit with massive civil judgments because the shareholders can sue them too. And they were ordered to pay a combined $134 million in direct restitution back to Tyco.
Yeah, that Rowan party was probably pretty sick, though. I bet they had the big horse that, tries to get into Troy.
Well, fraud aside, I do want to talk about when private aviation can be extremely useful. So the first one is security. And this is actually something that's written into the bylaws of a lot of these companies. Apple, Meta, Walmart, the board of directors say, like, we can't have Tim Cook just traveling through a Tulsa regional airport on foot. That is not safe. People are going to mob him. Who knows what could happen? There's a serious key man risk to all this.
But the people want to see their Tim Apple, they want to get their hands on that guy.
The other reason is confidentiality. It would be pretty weird if you were on a Southwest flight and in front of you, in the middle seat, you can see Brian Armstrong of Coinbase flipping through docs for a big acquisition.
Yeah, I'd imagine you're, using that really shady plane Wi-Fi to try and get some trades out there before they can catch you.
Another reason is like the execs probably do deserve some sort of perks here. They're flying all over the world. And how do you get somebody to work this high-profile job? Well, access to a corporate jet is a pretty cool perk if it's managed correctly. And that's both a double-edged sword. So the ongoing cost of maintaining it and keeping these planes in the air, keeping them safe and functional, that will hit the profit and loss statement immediately, but it gets categorized by why the plane was flying in the first place. So let me go deeper on that. If it was for a legit business expense, 100% of the variable costs, so you get your fuel, your landing fees, in-flight catering, that all gets booked under general administration overhead. But if the flight was for the CEO's vacation, that specific portion of the variable cost has to get stripped out and booked as an exec comp expense.
And what if you bring your, Chipotle on board with you? Does that's just a self-incurred cost, right?
You can get that reimbursed using your Brex card. If the company owns the jet outright, it goes on the balance sheet. It's classified as a non-current asset under PP&E, property, plant, and equipment, for all the people who love ampersands out there. Every year as depreciation hits the P&L, the asset value of the plane shrinks on the balance sheet.
I feel like we're getting dangerously close to EBITDA or something, earnings before interest, tax, jets, and appreciation.
Also, EBIT law if you lease the jet, Ben.
Okay, tell me more about that.
And this is where it gets funky, because if you didn't have this, then a lot of people would be leasing these jets and putting them as off-balance sheet items or off-balance sheet leases, and it could get super sketchy. And this is where the SEC stepped in and said, we need an accounting rule update here, and it's called ASC 842, where companies can no longer hide private jet leases off the books.
Ooh, sneaky, sneaky. I love a good off-the-balance sheet item.
There is a bit of a loophole, though.
Love me some loopholes.
It's charters and fractional ownership here, because many modern companies avoid the balance sheet headache altogether of having this $50 million jet by just booking on-demand services. This can be hard to track because you don't own it, right? You don't lease it. You're just renting hours on it, much like you could pay for software. You could pay for rent in an office, something like that. And that is a lot harder to track.
So it's almost like they're paying for Uber Jet rather than buying the car or buying the jet.
Yeah, I mean, close enough. They're paying a pre-negotiated rate for a number of hours on board. And sometimes they're doing it by buying, say, 250 hours at a time. Or other times they're doing hey, I got to go from Vermont. I don't know why you're in Vermont to Florida.
So in that sense, a $50,000 private jet looks identical on the ledger to $50,000 for, I don't know, software or something like that.
Yeah, and without some forensic super sleuthing, it would be extremely hard to figure out which of these companies are using the money that they have to pay for execs to fly places. Today's episode is brought to you by Anrock, the sales tax platform behind companies like Anthropic, Notion, and Vanta. Here's a fun way to totally ruin a Tuesday. Open a letter from a state you've never set foot in, telling you that you owe back taxes you didn't know existed. Happened to me, because the rules never stop moving. States are now racing to tax AI, digital ads, streaming, really anything new, and they're doing it faster than a spreadsheet can keep up. Anrock handles all of it. One platform that watches your exposure everywhere, automates compliance, and flags risk before it turns into that nasty gram. That's why thousands of finance leaders trust Anrock to stay ahead. Talk to an Anrock sales tax expert for a personalized exposure estimate at anrock.com/RTN. That is ANROK.com/RTN.